Welcome back, guys, to another episode of the 2 Plus podcast. I'm Paddy, and today I'm going to run through my experience with scoring in 1.5 of the old world. So, for those who aren't aware, 1.5, the errata and match play guide dropped, and a lot of scenarios and objectives have been worked into the fabric of the old world, which has created this big mini game within the old world. It's no longer just a kill points game. There's capturing objectives involved. So it's opened up a lot of flexibility in list writing and a lot of things you have to consider now when playing the old world, whether that's in tournaments or with your friend on your back deck. There's going to be a lot more scope for varied games like this one on the board right now, which was a game that Alex and I played, King of the Hill, which, to no surprise, revolves around capturing this hill in the middle of the board. We deployed a little bit illegally, so ignore that. It's got a varied deployment zone, which means you should only deploy in a bit of a rectangle here with no wings. But regardless, the premise of this video remains the same. So you would expect that there's going to be a big bloodbath over this hill, and there is, and we'll get through that in a second. But what this game really highlighted was the different roles of units for scoring and the different units' roles for scorings. So there's infantry, cav, ambushing, resilient, there's fast, there's all of these things that play a part in scoring. I think when the edition, we'll call it a new edition, dropped, everyone was in love with the idea of bringing 30 infantry that's immovable and plonking them on an objective. But I don't think it's quite that simple. So we're going to have a look in a second at what I think, and it's not the be all and end all, but what I think the unit types and their roles are and the effect they're going to have on scoring, because I think it's broader than a lot of people expect. But let's get stuck into it.
Become a member and support the channel. Old World Tactics, Battle Reports, the 2 Plus podcast.
Just before we have a look, I want to thank our 2 Plus supporters who are our paid Patreons who help this channel keep going. Ghost, Silver Dave, Sick, Pandem Wargaming, Katro, and Gomo. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. It goes a long way, and we appreciate the support. If you would like to support us, check the link in the description of this video and check out our Patreon. There's one paid tier, helps pay for this software, helps motivate us to keep pushing out these videos. But if not, liking, commenting, subscribing still goes a long way. So thank you for all who are doing that. So I wanted to look at the types of scorers, as mentioned. In this explanation, I'm going to focus on core units because most of the objectives, most of the scenarios revolve around that. And I think that's going to be a key part of the meta moving forward. And it makes the game a lot more interesting as well if you're playing with your friend. So this is where I think it's going to go. It's not every scenario, but it's most of them. So core units that do the following roles, I think, have just been elevated massively in this edition. The first type of unit and that can score, I believe, is what I'm going to call a defender. And I think this is going to be infantry, most likely. Defenders are the units that you plonk on an objective that's hard to move, that is very durable, and probably has a lot of static combat res, because when you're getting charged, you're likely to take more damage. So you need that buffer of combat res to level the playing field or push it into your favor. The reason infantry is so good at this is because they get an extra rank to their rank bonus. They're cheap. It's quite easy to put a cheap wizard in there to give them battle magic, which would give them a ward save. I think that's going to be very, very, very common. It already was pretty common, but I don't think there's going to be Death Stars as such around, although probably at the top end, yes, there will be. But your regular tournament play or your regular games against your friend in your backyard will be a brick of 20 to 25 infantry, maybe a wizard, maybe a BSB, a war banner, battle magic to give them Oaken Shield. If you're Empire, you're probably giving them the Griffin Standard to give them a static combat res of like 11 or something like that. But these units aren't going to do a lot of damage. They're going to take a lot of damage and possibly still win the combat. The changes to the changes to close order, where infantry leans into that very well because you need unit strength 10. The outnumber rule, which I forget what it's called, which gives you an extra combat res if you outnumber your opponent. Obviously good for infantry. It's just cheap bodies. And then the double the fighting rank, which has changed in this edition, means that you have an extra chance of doing a bit of chip damage here and there. So infantry, in my mind, are the best defenders. I think you will struggle unless you're, of course, playing Nomadic War or something like that, if you don't have a sturdy brick of infantry to just sit on an objective. It forces your opponent to come at you, which alters the battlefield and allows hammers to do the job on your end. The other type of scorer, I believe, are attackers. So once a defender is there, obviously if your opponent has a defender on an objective, you need to push them off. So you need something that has some punch. This is where your heavy cav, your monstrous infantry, or things with great weapons or lancers, something that has high strength, high AP, comes into play. Again, if you can make this unit core, then it's even better. Doesn't have to be, and this would probably be where your special comes into play. There's a lot of good and rare. There's a lot of good hammers in special and rare. That's often where the damage output comes from. Your your mid-tier monsters of your giants, your gorgons, which we'll get into in a second, really comes into effect here. And the way that you make this work so well is by combo charging. So defenders will just have this defensive advantage against you. Attackers, if you just send 5 Chaos Knights into a unit of state troops that has static combat res of 10, you're not going to win. But if you send Chaos Knights and a gigantic spawn and a chariot in, then you're probably going to win. And this is where the skill is going to come into the game, I believe, which is great for the game because you're not just pushing models against each other, you're actually strategically thinking about how to gain advantage in a combat. Some units that do the attacking role very well, Boar Boys, they are core. Chaos Knights, they are core. Empire Knights to a lesser degree, but I think there's enough there. They're only strength 3, which hurts. But any way you can get mobility and punch in a unit that is core, then you're going to be able to tee up these combo charges a bit better and push defenders off objectives. The other thing to consider is, can the unit be both? So Boar Boys is one I just mentioned, which I think can do both of these things, defend and attack, and that's because of their special rules. In Nomadic War, they can be core. Sorry, I should have mentioned that as well. They can be core. They are toughness 4. They have a 3-up save. It's quite easy to get Oaken Shield on them, and they have counter charge. So they can sit on an objective and know that if something charges them, they can counter charge out and have the chance to do some damage back. That means your opponent is less likely to just throw random things into them. They have to get the perfect charge off, and while they're doing that, you can be aggressive and push out and charge off against them. So Boar Boys is something, and Chaos Knights, which I've mentioned a couple of times, can do that quite well. Infantry are less likely to do that quite well because they don't move very far. That's where mobility comes into play. The other tier that I've kind of made up myself is the Thieves tier. A lot of people were very excited about infantry, and they should be, when 1.5 dropped, but I think there needs to be consideration for fast cav and ambushes. And you'll see why when I run through what happened in our game the other week. Fast cav have the ability to obviously move around the board quickly. Once the battlefield has settled and there's been a big bash 'em up in the middle of the board, fast cav have the ability to then just roam around, pinch objectives off your opponent wherever the space is they move to, and they just mop up some victory points at the end of the game. Similarly with ambushes, this new addition that focuses on people coming out of their deployment zone to score on objectives means there's more room for ambushes to move into space and capture objectives that are near your opponent's deployment zone, and to just pick better positions on the board to come onto. If you have something like Wolf Riders in ambush in Nomadic War, sorry to keep focusing on this, but these are the armies that I play, adapt them to whatever armies you play. But if you have ambushing Wolf Riders in core that come on the board at turn 4, when all of the threats are dead, You come on, you still get to move, and then they have reserve moves so they can move again. And 18 inches from the side of the board is likely going to put you onto an objective, or to contest an objective, or to steal one that your opponent had been capturing most of the game and have moved off, and now you come on and pinch it. So I think that's something to consider. Now, some special rules just before we get into some photos from the game that I think work really well for capturing objectives is Unbreakable first. What comes to mind is Undead. They have a lot of Unbreakable, particularly in core. What Unbreakable allows you to do is even when you lose combat, you do not make a break test, you just give ground. So if, for example, on King of the Hill, if you have a giant block of zombies or skeletons that have captured the hill, instead of just putting them on the center of the hill, you overrun the hill and go 6 or so inches ahead of the point that allows you to capture. And then each turn you lose, you're only going back 2 inches. So you're still capturing this objective because you're the closest to the point to capture it, despite getting wiped each turn. You just keep resing them back, and all of a sudden they're not going anywhere, and they're getting 100 points a turn in the instance of King of the Hill. King of the Hill. Shield Wall is another one. It's a pretty rare rule, and it's hard to get off sometimes. So Shield Wall allows you to give ground instead of falling back in good order when you lose a break test. So this one is a bit difficult. So you need to, when you lose combat, you need to not be double outnumbered, and you need to have a high enough leadership where you have that buffer to fall back in good order. Obviously, if you have the chance to just give ground on a good roll, then that's also great. But Shield Wall allows that 2-inch pushback instead of a max of 6 on a fallback in good order. Where this gets interesting is when you pair it with Stubborn. Stubborn in its own right is good because of that no chance to break. So you can stay on an objective, or you can hold an opponent in at bay and in position for your hammers to come around. But you can use both Stubborn and Shield Wall, the one-off ability for both of them, to allow you to forego the break test to fall back in good order using Stubborn, and then use your Shield Wall to forego the fallback in good order and give ground instead. There's only a few units in the game that have this inherently. Temple Guard have it. I think Ironbreakers, Hammerers. There's a few others I forget, but the way you can get Stubborn onto units with Shield Wall is the Banner of Iron Resolve, I want to say, which is 50 points. It's a common standard, magical standard that you can put on your Shield Wall units to allow you to Stubborn Shield Wall. And that gives some units some play, I think. It's 50 points is a lot of investment, but when it means you're capturing 100 points for capturing the hill, then it's worth it, obviously. So something to consider there. And that gives you the next one, which is Countercharge, which I kind of explained a little bit. This just allows units to have that duality of capturing and defending objectives. If you go first, you have Chaos Knights, your objective is right in front of you, you just move them up and capture it. And now someone has to come and push you off it, but you have Countercharge, so they better make sure that their charge is going to win. Because Chaos Knights in particular, I think they are initiative 4. I think that they should be higher initiative than regular men. So they would still be hitting first when, say, Empire Knights or Boar Boys charge them. I'm guessing, but someone can correct me in the comments there. But it just gives units the opportunity to play 2 roles. You don't have to move this unit off the objective if it's capturing 100 points a turn and your opponent's worried about charging them because they will charge you back. So these are all abilities that I think are going to play a role. They were already good abilities, and now they just have a bit of extra push to them. So let's get into the game that Alex and I had. So this is what the end of turn 1 for both of our turn 1s looked like. As I said, a mad dash to capture the hill. I went first. My Wood Elves at the top there. I had 19 Eternal Guard and a BSB in there. So they drilled, marched on top of the hill, out of charge range of the Minotaurs there. But you can see there's 3 scoring units here that want to capture the hill. My Eternal Guard get there first and are closer to the objective point. So they, at the end of turn 2, had already accumulated 200 points. Alex's 1 scoring unit here is the core Minotaurs, and his second one are the core gauze here with the Doombull in it. So this was setting itself up for this ginormous bloodbath on the hill, which is great. Anyone who hasn't played King of the Hill and has been a bit annoyed with how the old world plays, this is the objective for you, the scenario for you, because it encourages combat so well and so fast that it feels good. But because of this scoring in play, I didn't want him to combo charge me on his turn 2. So on my turn 2, I combo charged my Glade Lord over here into the flank of the Minotaurs and the Eternal Guard into the front. That was in an attempt to push them off the hill and allow me to keep scoring them. Charging with Eternal Guard is never in the playbook, but in this scenario, I thought it was worth it. And the objective points made me do that. So they pushed them off in the end and remain on top of the hill. This was after a reform. I was setting them up for what was the inevitable charge of the Gauze. But what I managed to achieve here was my Eternal Guard were in a pretty good position now to definitely get the points in my turn, maybe with some luck, hold it for another turn. That unfortunately wasn't the case. And this is what I was talking about, the combo charging. So we've already seen this defender attacker kind of scenario play out. My Eternal Guard being the defenders. Alex's attackers were the Minotaurs, but I managed to flip the script a little bit and push him off. But he had this unit of Gauze, which can score, and it made them an attacker by putting a Doombull in there who just annihilates stuff, which is great. Gauze are pretty average, I think, in my experience playing against them, but they are cheap. They score. You can put a strong guy in there that gives them some punch. He also combo charged with the Giant and the Gorgon, which ripped through my Toughness 3 elves. I did have one guy survive, which was cool. I think I had 16 at the start of this combat. He did 15 wounds, but he had stubborn. He's stubborn. He went this way, and he took a peril test through this Gorgon, and he died. But alas, the death of the Eternal Guard. But they had got their points back. So I had remained on that hill for 3 turns. So my turn, Alex's turn, my turn. And I pushed the Minotaurs off. So they got their points back, which is incredible for Eternal Guard. Anyone who doesn't know, they are so expensive. They're toughness 3, 5 up armor, strength 3, so they don't have a lot going for them. But in this game, they played a role, which is really, really great to see. So after a couple of turns, Alex's Gauze on there, I think, sat on there for 3 or 4 full turns, giving him 300 or 400 victory points. Again, a pretty average unit, playing a massive role in this game. I had managed to maneuver my War Dancers and Shadow Dancer and my Glade Lord around in front of this unit and do a combo charge again, which is, again, like, it forces this combo charge. You need to be charging when you're winning. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to have a learning curve, I think, of charging for the sake of charging, because that's what we want to do in Warhammer. But if you don't do it properly, you're just going to lose. So these guys are actually in base contact. It was just the hill didn't allow it. But my Shadow Dancer, unit of War Dancers, Glade Lord, charge into the Minotaurs. If I can't kill the unit, I want to whittle it down to unit strength 9. So that Alex stops scoring points. You can see as well the Gorgon in the background there staring down, which is another thing people have to think about. Alex has got his attacker turned defender now, capturing this hill, but he's made sure that he's got some hammers waiting in the wings. This is all just a bit of reforming that had to happen to tee up the second half of this battle. His Gorgon was staring down my Glade Lord, which does come into play later. You check out the battle report. Alex, I think, is bringing out maybe in a week or so, but it was a really interesting game. And there was a lot of this combo charging, hammers, anvils, the beauty of Warhammer that everyone loves to see in this game. This combat goes my way, and this is after 2 rounds of combat. So the War Dancers chew through the Gauze. The Shadow Dancer killing blows the Doombull. The Gorgon gets into combat with my Glade Lord and killing blows my Glade Lord. So on the same turn, we both got our generals chopped down, which is awesome. and there was another bloodbath on top of the hill. So Alex's unit is no longer scoring. I do run down these Gors if I didn't kill them. I can't remember, but my war dancers managed to run out of the way of the Gorgon. This was the end of Alex's turn anyway, so I was able to get out before the Gorgon frenzy charged into my poor little toughness 3 elves. But this is where the next tier of scoring unit comes into play, which is the Thieves. Because you may remember from my deployment shot, I had some Glade Riders, and shout out to Herald, Rank and Flank Herald. For anyone who listened to them at the start, they're a great bunch of guys. AJ created the software which allows you to recreate old school White Dwarf battle reports. We use them in our battle reports, and Alex will include this. Will include this kind of imagery in this battle report that's coming out soon. But you can see here, you might remember my Glade Riders deployed over here, and they were peppering down a Razor Gore. They did a couple wounds to it, but then I realized that I wasn't going to do anything to this unit, and that everything was dying on this hill. So this is where the mobility of units comes into play for scoring. It took me a turn and a half. So it took me a full turn, 18 inches, to get to about there, I think. And then I was able to, on my turn 5, get within radius of this hill. So 2 turns, I believe it took me to get from one corner of the board with impassable terrain in the way, protected by terrain, so I didn't get shot and the summoning, to end up over here. And this is at the end of my turn 5, so the top of turn 5. They are now scoring 100 points a turn by being close to this hill. The rules, as per King of the Hill, mean you have to be within 9 inches to capture it. And Alex had no more units that could score this hill. So it was uncontested for my Glade Riders to just swoop on in after everything was dead, the hill stained with the blood of 1,000 scoring units, to just sit next to the hill, racking up 100 points a turn. So this is the top of turn 5. I got 100 for my turn, 100 for Alex's turn 5, and then 100 for mine, and 100 for Alex's turn 6. So they just rack up 400 victory points while everything's dead. They didn't do a whole lot early, but if you protect your fast cav, they have the opportunity to come swoop in and massively change the course of a battle. I ended up winning this game, but like 1,100 of the 1,200 victory points on offer for King of the Hill were taken, and these guys got 400. But there you have it, guys. This is one example. I think there's going to be a lot of learning with scoring. It's not as simple as infantry on a hill win the whole game. They definitely have a role, but I think it's in the early game, and then other types of units come out to play. I'm really excited to look at scoring a bit more, and we'll try out a few more scenarios, and we'll bring them to you as well. But if you have had an experience, share it with us in the comments. Again, if you would like to support the channel, Patreon's there in the description, the Discord's there in the description. We will be back again with some more 1.5 videos soon. Till next time, I'm Patty. I'll catch you later.